Give a little of yourself. Cure your greed. Purify your wealth. Look around at where you live. Look at all the good you have to give. Give a little of yourself. There's a hand somewhere to hold, a mouth to feed. There's so much that we can do for so many who are in need. Give our time, give our wealth, give our love, give ourselves. Know Allah sees each and every hidden deed. Give a little of yourself.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Fiqh of Zakah. This program we aim to answer your questions and elaborate about this topic of Zakah. We have more than 30 ayahs of the Quran speaking about this topic. We have details about it. Yet many people don't know the importance of this topic, and that's what we have come today to do. With me to explain and expound upon this, I have Sheikh Mohammad Salah. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Jamil.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for joining us,
Sheikh. It's my pleasure.
Sheikh, in previous episodes, we've looked into zakah of the wealth, of monetary items, of gold and silver. We've even, I think in the last episode, went into a very difficult topic, of course, which was livestock and cattle. Today, let's start looking at other elements, and one of the most, how would you say, quite interesting elements of zakah especially, is that of minerals and treasure. Something that many people think, well, what has that got to do with zakah? Tell us, Sheikh, what has minerals and treasure got to do with zakah?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina astafa la siyama al-mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira. Thumma amma ba'd. The scholars have agreed that there is zakah due on the money that somebody may find buried under the ground, which is called rikaz. A rikaz, this is a particular treasure which was buried from time of Jahiliyyah, before Islam. And the scholars said it's easy to recognize it, prints of ancient previous nations and so on. And because if it belonged to Muslims, then this is a luqata, this is lost and found, and you have to declare it so that the person who lost it would claim it. And if it was buried in somebody's house, it would be given to the person who buried it, if he's known or his heirs. But the rikaz, it's a treasure that is buried by ancient nations, and somebody dug it out by mistake. So he was lucky, and he dug out a pitcher or a jar full of gold or silver or valuables. So in this case, An-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, وَفِي الرِّكَازِ الْخُمْسِ The zakah due on al-rikaz, those kind of treasures, is al-khums, that is 1/5, 20% of what you find. That will be paid as a zakah due on it. With regards to al-ma'adin or minerals, which we extract from mountains and from under ground, such as gold and silver, aluminum, copper, brass, or even oil. The zakah on it is a little different than the case of the rikaz. In the case of rikaz, it was found luckily and by chance, but in case of minerals, we spotted certain areas where we say that it is rich of minerals, so we try to extract them. The zakah on it, the rate is similar to the rate of gold and silver and monetary. It will be rubu' al-ushr, or 2.5%. The difference between the zakah in the conditions of minerals, which we extract from the ground or from the mountains, and the zakah on gold and silver, that there is no hawl. Once it is extracted, we gotta separate the right of the poor, which is rubu' al-ushr or 2.5%, immediately. We don't have to wait for 12 lunar months to round up in order to pay the zakah. So the zakah on rikaz and treasures and minerals does not require the hawl.
A lunar year to pass by.
A lunar year to pass by.
Okay, so who would be the recipients? Is it the same as previously? We have this certain group of recipients, like we were told, or does it change for this?
In the case of al-rikaz, the treasures, Al-Imam  may Allah have mercy on him, said that the masarif, or the recipients of the zakah due or owed on treasures which are found, the same like the recipients of the regular zakah, the 8 categories who are mentioned in verse number 60 of Surah At-Tawbah. إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها, to the end of the verse, will be discussed and explained in details inshallah in future episodes. And he used the reference to that. He said once somebody found a picture in a deserted building in Al-Kufa, so he took it to Al-Imam Ali, may Allah be pleased with him. So Ali ibn Abi Talib ordered him to divide it into 5 parts or portions. Then he took the 1/5 or 20% of it. Then after the guy was about to leave, he called him and said, do you have neighbors who are poor and in need? He said yes. He said, go ahead and pay it to them. So he concluded from that the zakah to be paid on treasures to be paid to the same recipients of the regular zakah. While Al-Jumhur, Al-Imam Malik, wa Ahmad, wa Abu Hanifa hold a different opinion. Said no, in the case of al-rikaz, the recipients are the same recipients of al-fay'. Al-fay' is a very interesting term that we have also to learn about it, which is the war spoils or the war booty. In verse number 7 of Surah Al-Hashr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ما أفاء الله على رسوله من أهل القرى فلله وللرسول ولذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل. So specified the recipients of al-fay' or the war spoils, that to be given 1/5 of it would be given to Allah, meaning the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam would take the share and distribute it as he wishes to the Prophet's family, to the orphans, and to the poor and the wayfarer. Okay, so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family do have a share in this fay'. Versus in az-zakah, it is totally prohibited for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or Ali baytihi, his family members, to receive any zakah. So based on this ayah, Al-Jumhur, Malik wa Shafi'i, Malik wa Imam Ahmad and Imam Abu Hanifa said the recipients of the zakah due on treasures are the same recipients of al-fay'. According to the ayah of Surah Al-Hashr, what is the reference? They said once somebody found a treasure outside Al-Medina limit in a deserted area, so he took it to Al-Medina, to Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu arda. It was 1,000 dinar, golden dinar. So Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu arda took the share, which is 20%, and he distributed among some poor. Then he had some leftovers. He would call the man who found the treasure and said, take the remaining part. So they said, when Umar ibn Khattab gave the one who found the treasure, and it's a lot, so he maintained 800 dinar. That's plenty of wealth, so he's not poor. So he's not eligible for the regular zakah. So when Umar ibn Khattab gave him a part, that indicates this is not the same recipients of zakah. And he can be rich and he can be given out of this fay'. Not only that, in the case of zakah, we cannot pay the zakah to non-Muslims. While in the case of the fay', we can pay a part of that to non-Muslims. Also, zakah is not mandatory or non-Muslims, as we said. While if the rikaz or the treasure was dug out by non-Muslim, same rule will apply. So the more right opinion is the opinion of Al-Jumhur, Malik, wa Ahmad, wa Abu Hanifa, may Allah have mercy on all.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. We have a question which I think is tied to this slightly, and especially quite a modern question. Nowadays, treasure is not dug up anymore. Some people go to faraway lands and they find property which is not in the ground, it's above the ground, but it's got no marks of ownership, it's been there for a long time. Does this classify as treasure, or does it have to be something dug up and something in the ground?
That is called al-luqata. And al-luqata in Islam has a very beautiful rule that many Muslims do not know about it, which is if you find something, you do not just claim it, because that found property is lost by somebody else. So if you know him, you have to pay it back to him or her or to them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَى أَهْلِهَا. Indeed, Allah commands you to pay back the amanat, the trust, to those whom they really own it. So if you find something which you know the owner, you have to give it back to them. If there is any sign that indicates it belongs to him. What if you don't know them? Then if it is a valuable thing, it has to be declared for an entire year. You go in the same place and you declare it on a regular basis, every day, every day, every day. That indicates that the person, before touching anything that you find on the ground, you would not think it is a good luck, rather it's a responsibility.
So if you find your $50 bill while walking down the street, you can't turn around.
It's a valuable thing, but $50 you will have to declare it for 3 days, not for an entire year. It varies according to the value of the item which you find. There is a very interesting catch in the two hadith which we mentioned, whether the incident of the man who found the feature of gold or the silver, the darahim in Al-Kufa, then he took the whole thing and went to Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu ardah. Then in the case of the man who found the treasure or the jar full of 100 gold dinars, then he took it, the whole thing, and he took it to Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. What kind of people were they? I just want you to imagine that if you find such wealth or money, what would you do with it? Right away, people would confiscate and say, this is mine. Even if you rent a car, if people rent a vehicle, and they find valuable sunglasses, ultraviolet protection, or they find a watch or a wallet, very, very few people would render it back. This money is haram. It is not yours. So those companions would take, or those true Muslims would take the properties to the Khalifa or to the Muslim ruler. Nowadays they're afraid to take it to any person. He may claim it himself, or why? Because of lack of honesty. When Muslims recognize their responsibilities towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they live in the awareness of Allah's presence throughout the entire time, round the clock, then things will be completely different.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and inshallah return in a couple of minutes. Please stay with us on the Fiqh of Zakah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Give a little of yourself. Cure your greed. Purify your wealth.
Back to the Prophet. Join Sheikh Amar in the program Back to the Prophet, wherein he teaches us practical lessons from the Prophet's life and how this can help us to overcome our challenges in the present.
We talk about the life example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, seeking guidance for ourselves. In the early days after the revelation of the Holy Quran, the Muslims were greatly persecuted, so much so that quite a few Muslims had to leave Arabia and migrate to Africa to live among Ahl Kitab, Christian people who followed the gospel of Christ.
Back to the Prophet in Ramadan on Huda TV.
There's so much that we can do for so many who are in need. Give our time, give our wealth, give our love, give ourselves.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Fiqh of Zakah. Just previously we were speaking about a very important topic, which is treasures and minerals, in especially Zakah, how to go about finding it. And Sheikh, you expanded upon some really interesting things. One was that how honorable a Muslim should be. Somebody should be upright and so forth. Another thing that Muslims have to find out, especially when it comes to Zakah, is what do they do when they get income that comes in all of a sudden? How honourable they have to be. Because zakah, like you said, is something which they want to give and they should feel like giving to the poor. Can I give you an example? Somebody's got a lunar year and it finishes, say, just before Ramadan, and just before this he inherits a big amount of money. What does he do? How does he incorporate this into this zakah?
Sure. While we were gone for a break, I just remember a sound hadith in which Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was describing how honest should be people. When he said that somebody purchased a house from somebody from the nations before us, and he found a treasure, a jar full of gold in it. So he took it to the previous landlord, the one who sold him the house, and said, well, I found this money in the property, it's yours. He said, well, you bought it from me, I sold it to you, then it belongs to you. He said, I cannot take it because it was buried in it and it is yours. Just imagine, they were arguing that everybody wanted to give it to the other. Look at the honesty. Because they believe that there will be a day of resurrection, reckoning, and everybody will be held accountable for every penny that we earn. How did we earn it? And how and where did we spend it? So anyway, they kept arguing and disputing, and they decided to seek the judgment of a righteous man. They visited with him and said, this is the case. He said, do you have children? He said, yes. And do you have children? He said, yes. One of them had a son and the other had a daughter. He said, well, marry the son to the daughter and spend on their marriage from this treasure. And by that he diffused the problem. That shows us how important it is for a person to be honest and to make sure that you would not take anything, claim anything that is not yours. Even if it is something that you find in the street, you have to announce it. And if it is a valuable thing, you have to announce it for an entire year, so that the person who lost his property may go back in the same road or street and look for it, so he will claim his lost property. Now if somebody owed a zakah on his wealth, and let's say that he pays his zakah every year in the beginning of the month of Sha'ban or the beginning of the month of Ramadan, and he had some income that came to him or earning right before paying the owed zakah. Obviously, there is one case where if he did not own the nisab, then once an earning would come to him, and this earning is equivalent to the nisab or exceeds it. In this case, we will start counting a new hawl from the moment that he earned that nisab. Whether he inherited or got it as a gift, or he profited from a business that he was running or investing in it. But if he has already the nisab and he owed the zakah, he was about to pay it in a few days or next month or so, we will have to look at this earning and see. It is one of three categories. The first one, or the first case, is if this profit or money was a growth of his possession, his investment. He owned so much shares in the stock market, and just a few days before he pays the zakah, the market went up. So now his money was doubled. In this case, because this profit was a natural growth of his already owned nisab, then this entire money will be zakatable, and he owes zakah on the entire thing once the zakah is owed and due. Even though he earned it just yesterday, and the zakah is due tomorrow, as long as it is within the hawl. Why? Because we said in the past, if somebody owned the nisab and possessed it, then in the middle it fluctuated, it dipped down or below the nisab. So we said, according to the more right opinion, that we start over whenever he possesses. We don't say in between, if it goes up and down, that we consider the beginning. No, we consider once you maintain the nisab from point A to point B, the end of the hawl, the end of the 12 lunar months. So this is the first case. If the growth of, or the profit is a natural growth of what he already possessed, min jinsihi, of the same category.
Yep.
It can be, according to the second case, it can be of the same category, cash and cash, gold and gold, but or cattle and cattle, but not as a result of what I already possess. For instance, I have the nisab and I'm supposed to pay the zakah, then I received an inheritance. This inheritance is cash and I already have cash, or cattle and I already have livestock which is zakatable. But this is an independent wealth. It is of the same category, the same type of what I have, but it was not as a result of what I have.
It wasn't a growth of an investment.
It was not a growth of my position. So in this case, what you do is you start a new hawl for this new earning. Okay? As long as you already own the nisab, you start a new hawl, and whenever the particular earning that I have earned completes a hawl by itself, that will be a different year than the regular year which I pay my regular zakah. So, if somebody earns his salary, that's not a growth of my my investment.
No, it's not. No.
So this is money I get, but it's a result of my hard work, of my job. So in this case, you have two choices. The first one is either to put a timetable and say, I earned this salary on the month. So next year around the same month, I would pay zakah on it. And each month likewise, but this is very confusing and troubling. And not everybody can do that. And that's why I would say, since it is permissible and okay for a person to pay his zakah in advance, I say, once you earn this money, and it is from the same category of what you already own as a nisab, then it is better to pay the zakah on it all together, whenever the hawl is due. You don't have to, but this is better in order to take you out of the confusion of specifying a hawl for each earning. This is an inheritance, and this is a gift, and this is a salary. You're gonna have too many commitments to pay on specific times. The third, an earning that is not from the same category, such as, I'm a businessman. All of a sudden, somebody give me 40 sheep. 40 sheep. That is the nisab for the sheep. But I'm a millionaire. I was never in the livestock business. So this livestock that I have gotten, or I purchased, or I inherited, would have an independent hawl, because it's a different category of wealth. Even if it is, he has sheep, and he's gotten some camels or cattle. So each position would have its own hawl if he wishes. He has this allowance, or it is permissible for him to do so.
Great, Jazakallah khair. Now you're speaking about hawl again. I'm going to ask you a question which is very close to what we're discussing, Sheikh, is what happens if somebody's coming to the end of their lunar year? Like, for example, let's look at somebody who has crops, for example. He's coming to the end of his lunar year now, and just before the end, something devastating happens. Either his crops get destroyed, or, unfortunately, sometimes robberies happen and so forth. What does he do then? Now he's come to the end of his lunar year. What does he do?
This is a very important question. In order to answer this question, we have to first answer a question before that, which is whether zakah is a responsibility of the owner, or it is due on the holdings themselves. The holdings, whether it's the cash, or the cattle, the livestock, or the crops. Ibn Hazm, and this is also the famous opinion of Imam Ahmad, believes that the zakah is a responsibility of the owner of the nisab. So he says, if he owed a zakah, and his entire wealth, crops for instance, were ruined, once the hawl rounded, once the crops were collected, and he owed a zakah, then he must pay the zakah due on. But he lost the whole crops. According to their belief, the effective cause, that it is due on the person, the responsibility of the owner, not the holdings. Imam Abu Hanifa, may Allah have mercy on him, and others, believe that it is due on the holdings. So he says, if the person was not the reason, nor was he negligent, or did not cause his belonging or his possessions to be destroyed or ruined. It is not his fault. Then he's not blameworthy. He doesn't owe any zakah, even though it was due, because the entire holding were destroyed. Okay, that's why Ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi, may Allah have mercy on him, said, the purpose of zakah is to entertain and assist the poor. Right?
Yeah.
So if somebody lost his property, he is poor. He's eligible for zakah. We cannot just overburden him by asking him that you have to pay zakah while you already do not have any possession. And I do not believe somebody would intend to destroy his wealth or his properties because there is zakah owed on it. In order to waive the zakah or not pay it, he would just ruin his entire wealth. That doesn't happen. This is a different case than if the person separated the zakah fund and he was going to pay to the poor and he was robbed. In this case, he has to repay it, because now this is an amana. He separated the zakah fund, whether it's cattle and the sheep died, or a camel, bint Labun or bint Makhad, and it died. You have to bring another one. It is your responsibility to give it in the hand of those who are eligible for it or entitled for it. Before that, if it dies, if it's ruined or robbed, it is your responsibility to make it up.
Jazakallah Shaykh Muhammad for all your beautiful advice today. As you can see, another episode of the Fiqh of Zakah, very informative episode. Until next time, I leave you with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Give a little of yourself. Cure your greed, purify your wealth. Look around at where you live. Look at all the good you have to give. Give a little of yourself. There's a hand somewhere to hold, a mouth to feed. There's so much that we can do for so many who are in need. Give our time, give our wealth, give our love, give ourselves. Know Allah sees each and every hidden deed.